Like many others, possibly out of fear of rejection or being called crazy, Yara kept her near-death experience to herself for a long time, over 30 years. We are grateful to hear her story and to be able to share it with those who follow our channel. Please subscribe and share this video so that more people can learn about these phenomena and discover that there is more beyond this earthly life. If you have had or know someone who has had an NDE, write to us at the email provided in the description of this video. Now, let's hear the account.
Before my NDE, I had attended several colleges, studying law and psychoanalysis, but ultimately decided to study and work as a journalist. My near-death experience happened when I was 34 years old. However, unlike many other NDEs, mine didn't occur due to a serious illness or accident. It happened in a gynecologist's office, in the same hospital where my terminally ill mother was hospitalized, and I was accompanying her along with my father. My father and I alternated shifts caring for my mother, and on this day, right after the shift change and before heading to work, I stopped by the gynecologist's office and asked if it would be possible to insert an intrauterine device. The doctor promptly agreed, and we decided to proceed with the procedure right then and there. The doctor left the room and later returned with an anesthetist. Since I had undergone the procedure a few times without anesthesia, I was reluctant to use the medication. But the doctor explained that due to the emotional stress I was experiencing with my mother, anesthesia was recommended this time, and that I would wake up in 15 minutes. Despite my reservations, I agreed. My NDE began at this exact moment. Right after the anesthesia, I blacked out completely and soon found myself in a tunnel. It was a wonderful, pleasant, and harmonious place. But it was not pleasant for me because I felt trapped in the tunnel. I walked back and forth but couldn't find a way out. At a certain point in the middle of the tunnel of light, I began to see several stretchers on either side, and next to each stretcher, there was a being dressed like a nurse, but they were facing away from me. I couldn't communicate with anyone. I tried, but there was no response from any of these nurses. This place resembled a hospital ward. At this moment, I concluded that I was dead, and the people on the stretchers were also deceased, newly arrived and receiving some kind of care or treatment. Looking at those people being attended to, while I was in the tunnel observing everything, even without being told, I felt inside and was certain that I would return to life. This is very common in NDEs, where people have a heightened intuition, as if they already know all the answers they need. Continuing with my story, despite knowing I would return, I concluded that I still needed authorization. I recount that there is a certain type of hierarchy there, and it wasn't possible to return just by my own will. Authorization was needed. Interestingly, I also concluded that when a person in our physical world is undergoing a medical emergency, like a cardiac arrest, it's not just the earthly medical team that can bring the person back to life. It's the authorization from these beings in the astral plane that allows the person to return or not. When someone is resuscitated here, it's because this return to life has already been authorized. Another interesting and very common fact among people who have had NDEs is that I describe that place as very vivid. It felt more real than our life, and what I experienced is still very vivid to me, even after more than 30 years. I make it very clear that it wasn't like a dream. In dreams, everything is very confusing and disordered, but not there. Even after many years, I remember the details of what I went through. I continued walking through the tunnel, still desperate, looking for help to leave that place. Despite being a wonderful place, I couldn't get out or communicate. Eventually, after walking for some time, the tunnel began to narrow, and I saw something that looked like an exit. So I headed towards it. At the end of the tunnel, instead of an exit, I saw another tunnel very similar to the first one, but much larger, with sparkling white lights. It was something wonderful and vivid. However, I felt that it was a boundary for me and that I couldn't go into that second tunnel. I exclaimed, "No, I can't enter here." Despite no one explicitly telling me it was a boundary, I knew with absolute certainty that it was, so I decided to go back to where I had been. At least in that place, there were those nurses, and I hoped to be able to talk to someone. When I got back to where I saw the nurses, I incessantly asked someone to respond to me and help me, but no one even looked at me. Until a nurse turned her attention to me and extended her hand as a gesture of authorization, allowing me to return to my physical body. Unlike the other nurses, I could see this nurse's face, and it was familiar to me, though at that moment I couldn't say who it was. Years later, while investigating my NDE, I discovered that the face of that woman was that of a friend of my father, a nun named Marta. I left that place and soon found myself in the room where my mother would later pass away. I was there because during the procedure, the medical team placed me in the same bed as my mother. The moment I re-entered my body wasn't painful, but it wasn't pleasant either. It felt very heavy and dense, as if 2 tons were entering my body. After fully settling into my physical body, 5 minutes later, I opened my eyes and saw my father sitting next to me. My father, not knowing why I was there, began to question me. I didn't have many answers either because something that was supposed to last only 15 minutes, according to the doctors, had already taken 3 whole shifts. Strangely, the doctors didn't give me any explanation. They didn't even make a medical record. Even without knowing for sure, based on my conviction from my NDE that I had been dead for a while, I concluded that there must have been some complication due to the anesthesia, since I was unconscious for several hours. However, for some reason, the doctors did not document the procedure. Another notable fact from that tunnel experience is that I was wearing clothes I had never owned in my life. I could see myself normally in that place, walking, thinking, and reasoning about what to do, but the detail of the clothing stood out because it was something I had never had, and it was not at all like what I was wearing in the hospital. I conclude my account by saying, I learned what death is, and death doesn't exist. I was there just as I am here, the same Yara. I used to be afraid of death. Today, I have no fear of dying. I am convinced that we continue to live, and that these places described in other NDEs, like communities where we go after death, exist. Although I didn't access those places during my experience, I know they exist.
If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone you care about. We want more people to know that death is not the end. It is just a process that we will all go through, and in some ways, it is a very good thing. Thank you for watching the video, and see you next time.